Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Survive This Crit. If you are new here, here's a little bit about what we do. We take our favorite horror movies, we analyze them, we understand them, and then we create RPGs out of them and see if we can survive this horror movie. So, for our 10th series that we have done so far, we are shaking it up and doing The Conjuring. So, Nick, would you like to give a summary of The Conjuring?
Yes, really quick though, before we get into it, quick reminder to our fans out there, please like and subscribe for this.
All right.
So, do you want my personal summary or do you want the IMDb summary?
I will send you a summary, my dude. Hang on.
In 1970, paranormal investigators and demonologists Lorraine and Ed Warren are summoned to the home of Caroline and Roger Perrin. The parents and their five daughters have recently moved into a secluded farmhouse where a supernatural presence has made itself known. Though the manifestations are relatively benign at first, events soon escalate in horrifying fashion, especially after the Warrens discover the house's macabre history.
All right.
Ooh.
So with
Macabre, what a fun word.
I know it's a nice like $2 word there.
Mhm.
An introduction to The Conjuring. The budget for this film was $20 million. It grossed over 316 million worldwide. 137 million of that was domestic, and 179 million was international. It released in theaters July 19th, 2013, with the opening weekend being $41 million. So it did great opening weekend. So Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema were the companies that created the project. You remember New Line Cinema, right?
Mm,
Their first
I did.
project was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Darn right it was.
The director of this film was James Wan,
The house that
who
Freddy built.
the house that Freddy built. And the director of this was James Wan. He's the director of Saw and the Insidious franchises. He's known for creating Billy the Puppet from Saw. And I have a whole lot more on him later because he was just really interesting. The film was written by Chad Hayes and Carrie W. Hayes. They both worked on Conjuring 2. The film stars Patrick Wilson, who we know from Insidious, Phantom the Opera, Hard Candy, and so much more. Also starring Vera Farmiga from Up in the Air, Bates Motel, and so much more. Ron Livingston, Lily Taylor, Joey King, and there are so many other talented actors that were also in this. So yeah, I just want to say like the cast was outstanding. A few of the awards that they won was the Bad Dung Film Festival for Commendable Imported Horror Film, Empire Award for Best Horror, Critics' Choice for Best Horror, People's Choice for Best Horror, Fangoria Chainsaw Award for James and Lily Taylor, and a variety of Fright Meter Awards. And this film became what will become a $1 billion horror movie franchise, being the highest $1 billion franchise with 9 films at 2.65 million.
Are they
So,
already at
can you
9 films?
only 9 within their whole franchise, which is crazy. You'd think it's a lot more.
No, I'm surprised it's that many. Okay, there's The Conjuring 1, 2, and 3. Then there's the Nun movie. I thought it was like six.
No, there's more. There's at least 2 Annabelles, and there's at least 2 Nun
Oh,
movies.
that's right. I forgot about the
They're
Annabelles.
all they're all connected. When it comes to the $1 billion horror movie franchises, can you guess what the other top billion horror movie franchises are?
Wow, I didn't realize I was gonna be the one being asked questions here today. Um,
Always.
I'm gonna $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Is it one of them?
It is. It the
Oh,
2017 version is on that list. They only have 2 films, but they created over $1.17 billion. So they did great.
mm.
I think
Does that make it statistically better then?
no, not better than The Conjuring. Um, but the list of the other $1 billion horror franchises are Conjuring at the top, and then Alien with 8 films and 1.65 billion. Resident Evil with 10 films, hitting 1.24 billion. It with 2 films and 1.17 billion. And Saw with 9 films and $1 billion.
Mm. So what I'm hearing is that per on a per movie capita, it is doing the best performance wise. Just saying.
Yeah, it's true. You are right there. So, Nick, it's time for your favorite category, the tomato meter. Do you have any guesses on how this did in on the tomato meter versus the audience score?
Ugh. Time to embarrass me. All right. Okay, so we're starting off with the fan section, right? I never trust the normies. So I feel like they rated this movie very high. I'm gonna say 90%.
You're not that far off. The audience score was 83,
Okay,
but, but not quite there either.
I know, right? Ugh. Okay. So then the critic score.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm gonna say the critics. I'm gonna say the same guess, 90%.
86 for the tomato meter. So you
Okay.
actually were even closer. You did very good that time.
And all I had to do was not move at all.
Exactly. You just didn't even have to do anything. Okay, so how does this film hold up with the audiences that probably saw this film? I feel like most of the letterbox users are millennials. So millennials and like Gen Z. So I feel like these are people who saw this movie maybe when they're in their teens for the first time. And then when they rewatch it and add it to their letterbox profile, what would they rate that as? What would be the average?
Well, let's see. I feel like Letterbox is where people try to look more sophisticated than they actually are. So, except if you're swooning over the lead actress, then that's a different story. There's a lot of guys like that too, apparently. I'm gonna say that the average score on Letterboxd is a 4.0.
You're pretty close. It was a 3.6 out of 5.
Okay. So
And
basically across the board, all pretty close, but no cigar.
yeah, pretty close, but no cigar. But most of the reviews are actually about how hot Ed and Lorraine are. So you were not that far off
I knew
in that
it.
regard.
It's always these comments. Oh,
And then a
Tony
couple of
Collette. Oh,
Nori Weaver. Ooh. Jennifer Farmiga. Ooh. Patrick Wilson. Literally all there's so many comments about them.
was
But
there anything about a dad bod? Like a perfect dad bod?
no, I didn't write it down. I just noted that there were so many. And a couple of the
Hmm.
other quotes that I found were LMAO, what if I knocked all their photos down? That would be hilarious from The Ghost, quoted by Adam Bolt. That was their review. And I thought that was on brand because when I saw that, I was like, yeah, they're just throwing a temper tantrum there. The other quote that I had was, I'm the agonized screaming in the background when Ed and Lorraine are reaffirming their devotion to one another from Indy.
Oh man. I will say I did like the fact that the two played a good married couple. Like the whole thing about the movie was like, oh, and this sounds kind of cheesy, but it's our love that'll keep us together. I'm like, oh my goodness. But at the same time, like, you know what? That's a better message than some horror films, so I'll take
That's
it.
true. Well, why don't you share your thoughts and opinions then? Because it seems like you have a lot of them.
I do. But maybe we should hold off until we do some trivia first.
Oh,
Or were you trying to avoid it, Kylie?
maybe I was. I don't know.
Trying to skip out on the trivia. Welcome, dear listeners, to our monster movie trivia section.
I'm not feeling confident today, I will say.
Don't worry, Kylie. Neither am I in you.
Oh, okay. Well, delightful.
Just kidding. Okay. So,
But you really weren't, though.
first question. No, I'm more like I don't feel confident in myself if I were given these questions. But I don't know. Sometimes you pay attention better to these movies than I do, so who knows? We'll see how this goes. Okay, so to reiterate our rules really quick for anyone who's new, I have come prepared in quotation marks. I'm reading off 10 questions from a different website somewhere. I've torrented these questions. Some of them are my own, but you'll never know. But
Ooh,
Kylie will be given 10 questions. And for every question wrong, she gets a slash. If she reaches 3 slashes, she is dead. She has failed the monster movie trivia.
All right, bring it on.
Okay. First question. What game did the Roger and Carolyn daughters play in the beginning of the film?
Hide and clap, because it was one of the most terrifying parts of that movie for me to watch.
Yeah, but it looks like such a fun game, honestly.
It does. It
Honestly, I
looks
wish
like
I'd.
a fun game if you didn't have to worry about a demon jumping in and playing as well.
Yeah, you're dragging you into a wardrobe. What kind of toy did April find when she moved into the new house?
April found the like wind up music box thing that's like when you look in the mirror after the song finishes, he will appear.
Yeah, so it was the music box.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was technically called a music box because it had so many more surprises than that.
Nope, definitely the music box. Okay, so what was the profession of the young woman who first owned the Annabelle doll?
Oh, uh, dang, Nick. You've already stumped me. I honestly don't know. I would want to say something really bland like waitress because she was pretty young, but I don't think that's right. So I think you're gonna have to give it to me.
You're gonna take the hit on this one?
Yeah, I don't know.
They were so it was 2 girls, they're roommates. They were both nurses.
Ah,
Remember at the beginning, they're like, "Oh, we're nurses, so we're naturally accommodating." So of course, when we heard that there was a ghost wanting to haunt us, we just wanted to accommodate it.
I should have known. Dang it.
I
I should have known.
I rolled my eyes on that one. All right, Kylie, here comes your
I'm ready.
first slash. Good.
I'm dead. Well, not yet.
Next, fourth question. Where did Carolyn first meet Ed and Lorraine Warren?
I feel like she met them at one of his, I don't want to call it a sermon, one of his presentations that he was giving about uh demonology and paranormal investigations.
I, you know what? I'll allow that one.
Mhm.
It wasn't a presentation, Kylie. It was actually a lecture. Just to add a fun fact to it. I don't
Okay.
know if you know this, but in that scene, did you know that the real Lorraine Warren was in the crowd?
No, oh, that's so cute. Because I watched a bunch of interviews with her and she was just so charming that's adorable. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was surprised I caught it myself. I never catch little Easter eggs like that. And then I looked and I was like, wait a second, I know that face. And
Imposter.
I paused the screen. I was like, that's the real Lorraine Warren. Fifth question. What did Roger Perrin, the father, do for a living?
The father, okay. I know it's not car mechanic. My brain instantly went to like something using your hands like a mechanic or even like a plumber or something, but I don't know.
He was a truck driver.
I was so close, but so far. Because like car mechanic to truck driver, very different skills, but both involving a car. I mean, I would give me a half a slash for that, but that's just me.
Nope, I'm sorry. It's a full slash.
All right, bring them on. Let's do it.
Which one of the Perrin daughters was a sleepwalker?
Oh, turd nug. I can't remember any of these kids' names. April?
The answer, Kylie, was Cindy.
Yeah, there were. It was one of those casts, like it made sense to have a big family, but at the same time, I didn't know any of the family enough to remember them by name. I just knew something spooky happened to each one of them.
You didn't know every daughter by name, all 5 daughters?
No.
Cindy, April, Andrea, Nancy.
As he looks at his list to double check and make sure he's not forgetting anyone because he only said 4 names.
Yeah.
Judy.
Judy. No, it was not Judy.
It is Judy.
It's definitely not Judy. No, there was Nancy, Cindy, April, Andrea, and Christine.
Oh, well, it was not Judy for sure then.
Nope. Okay. Ready? Sludge! You're sorry, Kylie, but you are dead.
Ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-da. That was
But
Mario Kart sound.
ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba.
Okay, well, go through the rest of them. Let's see if I could have gotten some of these right.
Okay. What happened? So what happened to Nancy while she was in the living room with her family and the Warrens during that seance that they had?
Yeah. What
Uh
happened to her? She got her hair pulled. They attacked her and grabbed her.
yep, she was dragged by her hair. Okay. How did Bathsheba in the movie die?
She died by hanging herself.
That is correct.
Man, I would have done so much better.
Correctly pronounce the name of the actress who played Lorraine Warren.
Farrah Farminga.
Yeah, I was actually going to switch up that question and say, what was the title of the real Andrea Perron's book that she wrote about her events at the house?
Ooh, I don't know.
It's called House of Darkness, House of Light.
Oh, interesting. Okay. That
Yeah.
was that was a new one. I would not have gotten that one. That's cool though.
And yeah, those are the 10 questions.
So I would not have made it in the end, but I did get more than half right. So not terrible. Not the worst in the world, definitely not the best.
Yeah,
Well,
but still dead,
but still
nonetheless.
still dead. So Nick, what are your thoughts and opinions on this movie? Because I know coming into this you've had like inklings at very strong opinions that you've been wanting to throw out. So what are your opinions on this movie?
I mean, there's a lot going on with this movie that I have so many mixed feelings about it, to be honest. So, to start off, with its credit, this movie was absolutely terrifying. I'm not even kidding you, Kylie. I was paranoid for about a week, and then I chilled out for maybe about a few days, and then I got paranoid again for another couple.
Oh my gosh.
I had to, anytime I was alone in my house at night, I had to be playing Christian worship music all the time just to keep my mind at ease because I kept thinking this was so this was the other thing that I thought was interesting about this film was the fact that they introduce these uh stages of uh demonic possession, and one of the first ones being invitation. And I thought that's scary and brilliant at the same time, the fact that they bring it up of like, oh, invitation, if you invite a demonic spirit into your home, that's the first step, and then it can lead into uh infestation and then oppression. um there are actually 5 stages, I believe, that the real Ed Warren gets into, but the movie only touches on 3. But it kept me wondering the whole time. And, our audience who watched this show before knows that, like, oh, we write RPGs about these movies and stuff like
Mm,
that. I kept wondering, like, how close am I into inviting something by, you know, watching this movie and trying to replicate the story and make it into a game? And I
mm,
kept having that paranoia, that fear. Luckily, because of like things like, the Bible and what I have in my faith, like I was able to talk myself out of that. But I do think, to its credit again, one of the other great things that this movie does is that at the end, it makes its audience have to kind of face that question of,
mm,
one, do you believe in demons? And then having to really just kind of shape your own perception of reality based off of that. How do you respond to that question of, do you believe in demons?
mm. Yeah.
So I thought those were all interesting, but there were also things I did not like. And mostly it's about what happens with the real life people in the story. But to the movie, I will say this: I didn't like all the jump scares. Just to simplify that, jump scares are obviously spooky, they're scary, they frighten us, but it's cheap, and it doesn't take a lot to produce a jump scare. And I felt like this movie really just kind of beat its audience over the head with the jump scare and decided not to focus as much on the plot of the film itself. And so I thought, like, okay, what does it say to your audience when your movie decides to focus more on these jump scares, these algorithmically proven ways to scare your audience versus doing the real work of building a strong storyline and using the right effects to help build that more you know internal fear in us,
Mm.
the thing that makes us play with our own imaginations, like what could actually be going wrong.
But it sounds like, based on what you said, you experienced some of that as well. Like, I know you said you don't like the cheap tricks, but obviously they were effective to a certain degree because you did say that you were having to play worship music and stuff after watching it because it brought you some anxiety.
Oh yeah. No, I'm not saying like this stuff doesn't work. I'm saying it's proven to work. I'm saying it's the easiest thing you can do. And
Got
that and then that kind of begs the question. I think it makes you as your like have to force some type of introspection on yourself of like, did I like this movie because of the jump scares and how much it freaked me out? And in which case, you know, are you a masochist to that extent? If you're really obsessed with these, like if you're such a big fan of like these types of movies, to what extent then are you just, not to like be divisive here, but how much are you psychotic? The fact that you liked it because of all the jump scares.
Oh my gosh. You know what? To a certain degree, I do like jump scares just because it gets your adrenaline going. But I, I'll piggyback off of what you said. I had a similar watching experience. The first time I saw this was like in college, and I'll include a picture here of what happened when a friend jump scared me in the middle of watching it. Truly terrified me. But
Mhm.
I will say, this time watching around, I hadn't watched it since I watched it in college, and I liked it a lot. I love the production value. I will say it took us 2 days to watch it. We got about halfway through it, and then we both just kept feeling really uneasy. And we're like, well, okay, well, we're going to switch this off and watch something else, and we'll finish it tomorrow. And we finished it tomorrow, and I really liked the whole concept of good fighting evil. Like, I remember Kevin Wetmore when we had him as a guest. I'll make sure to link his episode below. When he talked a lot about how horror movies, like demon horror movies, are demon killer movies. You're rooting for the hero. And I think that was something I had lost perspective of because there were so many jump scares and it made me so uneasy that I lost the perspective of, oh, this is a demon killing movie. We're gonna watch Ed and Lorraine kick some serious demon ass and like mess them up. But outside of that, like I did enjoy it because it does raise some interesting questions about exorcisms and about how real like this is. Like you said, like about if demons are real and good is real, evil is real, like, and creating this whole spiritual realm of questions for you to answer. And I think that that was really a cool experience.
Mhm. So I think that kind of begs the question, since we're both talking about demon stuff. So Kylie, as Christians, I felt like this was a great topic for us to discuss in this film. What are your view on demons? Do you think they're real? Do you think they're not? And do you think that they still actually show up on this earth?
I definitely think they're real. 100%.
Hmm.
They're, I mean, not to get too dark or anything, because we're a horror podcast.
Oh yeah, gosh forbid we get too dark on a horror podcast.
But there's definitely evil in this world, and I think there's a spiritual battle happening on the same realm as us. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there. So if I learned anything from that stupid hide and clap game that scared the absolute bejesus out of me, it was that there can be things there that you can't see, even if it's just going in the corner. So to add a little bit of light to it, yes, I do believe that demons exist and evil exists, but I also believe good exists and is very alive and real.
Yeah. And so it makes me wonder a little bit about people who watch this movie aren't Christians. Like what is it specifically like that they find hope for in this?
I don't think we're the best people to answer that question. And I think if there's anyone listening to this podcast right now that can answer that better, let us know in the comments because we'd love to hear other perspectives because we do come from a very similar theological background. It'd be interesting to hear someone's perspective who is agnostic or atheist. Like, why would you watch these movies? What hope or despair do you gain out of watching them?
Mhm. But I would say yes, I have the same view as you, which is like, yes, it's real. Yes, these things, demons can exist, even show up here on Earth today. And I think what the main cause of that is exactly what Ed and Lorraine Warren, the real life Warrens, would talk about was the first thing being invitation, that kind of build that opening.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't fully understand. I didn't read up on Ed and Lorraine like you did. So I think that'd be a great possibility to transition into the research you did on them. Because I would love to hear more about that because I don't necessarily have an opinion on whether I believe that is true or not. But I know Ed and Lorraine were experts, so it'd be great to hear what they have to say.
And so this kind of gets into the territory of what I didn't like about the movie. And
Okay.
mostly, again, it's about the real life aspect of it. The movie by itself is okay. You know, it, for the most part, I liked it because of the good versus evil aspect and good overcoming evil. But in real life, it's not as clean cut.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
you see, it turns out in real life, Ed and Lorraine Warren barely did anything in terms of actually helping the parent family. Basically, what it gets summed up to is they showed up and they investigated for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
Then they performed a seance,
Okay.
and one of the daughters, I believe, might have been Andrea, but don't quote me on that, started to actually float in a chair.
Whoa.
And after that, the father, Roger, threw the Warrens out of the house, and that was the end of it.
That was I mean, like, that's totally different from the movie, though.
There's a lot of things that are very different from the movie. This movie only took the course of, a few months, if at longest a year. The real time at which the parents lived in the house, it's called the Arnold Estate house, is the real house, was from 1970 to 1980. They lived there for 10 years and the whole time experiencing different scenarios, different hauntings. Like, for example, one of the creepiest ones I found out while reading a summary of Andrea Perron's book. Granted, I wanted to read a real book, did not have time, so this is what I found online.
Okay.
One of her stories was one of her sisters was playing with a dollhouse. She had little dolls playing.
Mm-hmm.
And while playing, the mom comes in, finds her playing with the doll, and then finds one of the other dolls moving on its own.
Ah, no. Mm-mm. Not a fan of
Mhm.
it. Oh my gosh, that's terrifying.
And yeah, basically different scenarios like that were very scary. And I don't know exactly the reason why they never moved out of the house after 10 years. I'm going to assume that the reason that's given in the movie is probably the most likely reason, which was that all their money was tied into the home and they couldn't afford to leave. That's understandable. The issue I have with this movie, one is, again, the Ed and Lorraine situation. I did a lot of research on real life Ed and Lorraine and how they actually handled some of their most famous real scenarios, like the Amityville Horror,
Mm-hmm.
the Parent House. The one that made me the most depressed and kind of gave me a different view, maybe than what you have, was the real life story based off their third movie, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Oh, okay.
And it goes like this, where for people who haven't seen the movie, there's a family, the Glatzels, and the youngest son, David, was basically possessed by a demon. And the eldest daughter had a boyfriend, a fiance at the time
Hmm.
during this possession era. His name was Arnie,
Okay.
and basically during an exorcism that they were doing on the son David, at one point Arnie looks at David and he's talking directly to the demon and says, "Take me instead," something else along those lines. And so a few months, at least about a month later or so, Arnie is found accused of murdering his landlord, and he claims that he has no recollection of that ever happening, and he blames the demon.
Whoa.
And so Ed and Lorraine had another movie where Ed and Lorraine came in, and in the movie they tried to, stop everything, but in the real life situation, they just kind of showed up. And what really made me disgusted was the way that at the end of that documentary, they handled the situation, which was they tried to help the Glatzels raise money through a book deal. And basically, the way Lorraine Warren is quoted, she went to the mother and said, "Don't worry, we're gonna make you a lot of money off of this." And so they do a book deal, and the dollar amounts that are given in the actual documentary are basically the Glatzels got about somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 in about 1980 money, and the Warrens themselves got about $81,000. Now, granted, I will give like, okay, well, maybe they need that money for expenses and other things, but it's the line there that Lorraine Warren is quoted that seems revealing to me, which is the fact that she prioritizes money over the actual care of this family, because it's shown that like this situation was divisive over them. And it started me going on this whole research about what do they actually do for like the parents. And even Andrea Perrin is quoted saying that the Warrens didn't do much, but she phrases it in a way that seems sympathetic. She said they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And
Oh,
that,
interesting. Okay. That's weird because I guess in that field you could have that excuse. Like, oh, we
mhm,
can't handle it.
yeah. And in some situations, that does seem to be the case. In other situations, they claim to have helped. But in this case, no. The movie is trying to really, and again, this is what leaves the bad taste in my mouth, is really try to prop up and place on a pedestal these two people who claim to be such a big help in the world of the spiritual realm,
Hmm.
helping families, but they didn't really do much. And a lot of people have come to call them con artists and fakes. When talking about their actual abilities, I have no say about whether or not they actually had these abilities. Lorraine's clairvoyance or anything like that. I'm no expert on it. I'm not going to touch on that. I could be persuaded that that is true,
Hmm.
but that is not the most important thing to me in this case. To me, it's about how they try to prioritize money and getting famous. So this movie really made me not a big fan of the Warrens, the real life Warrens. The movie Warrens are great. Should they keep a basement of haunted artifacts beneath their house? No.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. That part is so dumb, guys. Why? I mean, I get it, but also why?
yeah. And it also made me not a fan of the real Andrea Perrin also, because one thing I found out was these movies, because again, with the Glatzel family, I wondered why are they making these films if these families are embarrassed to talk about these types of things. And what I found out was that the parents supposedly were in full support of the making this movie, and I wondered why. And that's when I found out that Andrea Perrin wrote a book about everything going on in that house. And it made me wonder, it made me draw to this conclusion of maybe the reason the parents are so supportive of this film is because they wanted to help boost Andrea Perrin's book sales.
Interesting. That's, it'd be a real bummer if a whole spiritual battle that was documented was really all came down to money in the end. It'd be very
Yeah.
fitting And a real bummer.
Exactly. And so it got me to this conclusion, which was my final thing I was going to say about Andrea Perrin that just kind of made me angry, which was the fact that Andrea Perrin in later interviews would go on and state that she still goes back to the Arnold estate, to that house that's haunted. And she actually became a proponent for the real life Bathsheba, claiming that she's a misunderstood spirit. She would say like, "Oh, the movie kind of blames Bathsheba for all the things that happen, but she points to specific instances where they found that there's multiple spirits haunting the home, and especially this one spirit with a Scottish accent that seems to be particularly abusive and angry." To me, hearing that, I thought two things. One, that she seems to have a complete misunderstanding of how it is people should be reacting to ghosts and spirits. Now, personally, I don't think ghosts are real. I think that they are more like demons in disguise, trying to disguise themselves. But it's the fact that she knows what she's doing in this sense, which was either she believes that this is actually real, and she's trying to boost sales and get people to want to come because you can come and visit this home. And it's like, okay, let me tell you about this dangerous house, and please keep going there and get more interested in the story. It's like trying to purposely throw people into a dangerous situation, or she doesn't actually believe this, and that's why she's okay trying to profit off of this, and in which case she's just telling a lie.
That's fascinating because it's quite possible. It really could be either one of those.
Yeah. What's your opinion in all of this, Kylie? Because I feel like I've been talking our audience's head off of this.
No, you're good. That was fascinating. I don't think I realized that Ed and Lorraine could really have the power to possibly twist their story in such a different direction. I actually focused on exorcisms because I was curious. We see like foaming at the mouth, objects floating, screaming, and different voices coming out of them, people speaking in tongues, like all sorts of abilities that just seem totally unhuman. And so I did some research. I was like, okay, well, what would a real exorcism be like? And I pulled some quotes from an assistant to an exorcist. But I mean, honestly, we would love to speak to anybody who has assisted or performed on an exorcism for a future episode. So we'd love to talk to people who actually are experienced in that field. But this is what I found based on the research I did. So, Nick, this is our 10th series, and we've been doing this for a whole year. That is crazy.
Crazier than seeing dead people?
That's oddly specific.
Look, Kylie, just roll charisma to convince the audience that they're appreciated by us.
That's a nat 20, baby! Okay, so Nick and I wanted to give a huge thank you to our audience that has grown with us this past year. This whole project was derived from our crazy conversations that we have off the air, and we wanted to bring other people into that conversation. So, that being said,
there's no better way to say it than with free gifts.
That is right. We are hosting our very first giveaway. We collected a couple of beautiful horror pieces from films such as Halloween and Coraline and Us. And of course, we have a sticker as well from the Sugarmint Gallery in Pasadena, California, that we are giving all these goodies away to one lucky winner.
All right, so Kylie, I'm pretty sure our audience are wondering then, how do they enter for this giveaway?
So our giveaway is point-based. So check out the giveaway link below in the description. Every platform that you are subscribed to earns you a certain number of points. The more points that you have, the more likely that you are to win. There's even an option to submit daily for points.
So how long do our audiences have?
Our giveaway winner is going to be announced during the first episode of our next series on April 26th, which means you have a whole month to submit for points.
So better not just sit on your hands the whole time, That month's gonna come right around.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
With that being said, good luck, everyone, and here's to another year of the show.
Whee! So, exorcisms in real life, a lot of times they don't actually need to be done. A lot of times, like, it's a very well thought out process that has been going on for centuries. But ever since 2004, or the early 2000s, the Vatican reintroduced the idea of the old position of each diocese having an appointed exorcist with specialized training. So now there's actually an appointed exorcist within the church system. And how the process typically goes is that, like, they'll first come over and kind of evaluate the home, evaluate the person, and have the person seen by like a psychiatrist or something to rule out the possibility of mental issues, because a lot of exorcisms back in the day possibly were actually done on people with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, not with people actually possessed by demons. So basically how it works is, after the psych team works on them, their home, like I said, may be searched. And then if the possessed still is an issue, after that, this is, I guess, a direct quote from the Anglican Church. So the Catholic Church probably has a slightly different method. The padre will apply to the bishop, who will discuss with them prayers, psalms, and other details that need to be carried out. And the actual service may go from a general blessing to reassurance for the sufferer, or it may turn into an exorcism if the demonic energy persists. But basically now, a lot of days, it's just a blessing over the home or a blessing over the person rather than an actual exorcism. A lot of quotes have said, unlike Hollywood, we strive to remove all drama and focus on faith and prayer, which was a really interesting quote. That's from an actual practicing assistant. Yeah, I mean, today it's a very different process. Like, they really focus on making sure the person is like not just mentally unwell, not just, but you know what I mean. And yeah, so, but it is interesting that the Catholic Church is very Catholic Church, Anglican Church, and the Vatican, they're all still very involved in these ideas of exorcisms, even in the modern day. So, like I said, if you actually reach a modern exorcism, it does a lot of times there's not like necessarily foaming at the mouth or floating objects and stuff like that. Not, and I say not necessarily. I will link resources that I found below, because most of the time people were like, you know what? It's people speaking differently, speaking in tongues, acting differently. There's not necessarily a clear connection about like telekinesis and stuff like that. Although I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I just didn't find that in the research that I did. So I will leave that there, that Hollywood exorcisms and real life exorcisms are pretty different from what we saw. But of course, we'd like to hear firsthand from someone who's actually performed one eventually.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense what you were kind of laying out there, especially the having to evaluate a person psychiatrically
Yeah.
before proceeding with these. I know for a lot of families, I say a lot of families, I only did research on like a few, but for families who are going through this, I can imagine uh, having to wonder like where's the help? We're kind of, we're facing danger now in that sense, and they're scared. But it's an unfortunate consequence of the world that we live in, where people try to get famous off of these, and you use these types of situations to try and earn money and fame by getting on the news. Like even with the Glatzel family, there's some that don't believe any of this actually was true. And
Really? That's
yeah,
crazy. Members of the family don't believe it happened?
at least one, yeah. At least one brother doesn't believe it, and he actually I'll do more research if we ever get to that third movie, The Devil Made Me Do It.
Mm-hmm.
But basically he points to accusing his mom that of medicating them
Whoa, that's
by lacing their food with I forget what the name was, but it's a sleeping agent that had a lot of bad side effects. Um I was talking earlier about the differences in what actually happened versus the movie in that decade-long span of haunting that the real parent family experienced.
mhm.
But one of the biggest differences I found, Kyle, if we want to hear about it, is about the real life Bathsheba.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, Bathsheba was it married? Took the last name Sherman, so Bathsheba Sherman.
That's a wild name right there from the beginning. Okay, keep going.
Married in 1825, I believe. Born Bathsheba Thayer in Rhode Island in 1812, she married fellow Rhode Islander Judson Sherman in Thompson, Connecticut on March 10th, 1844. Now, in the movie, it's talked about how she was a witch, but it was never proven that she was a witch. It was actually only rumors. She actually went to court for this because what happened was she was found with a child, someone else's child, uh, and that child was dead, and they saw a sewing needle basically planted into the base of its skull. And a lot of people, a lot of townspeople were going around starting rumors saying that this was she was trying to sacrifice this baby to Satan. Now, in the movie, it talks about how she never had a child, and the whole ghost's whole motivation being that she was attacking children, wanting children because she never had one for her own.
Mhm.
But in real life, based off of consensus records, they found that she at least had one child. It's also believed that she might have actually had four children, and she lost three early on,
Uh-huh.
uh, just due to weather and disease back then. But she definitely had one son who carried on into old age.
Dang. I didn't
And,
realize that. They really steer away from that in the film.
yeah, and I believe it's because they just kind of what the real Andrea Perrin points to, which is that Bathsheba's easy to blame,
Hmm.
but the controversy is actually up there about whether or not she was a witch. And also, one thing the movie doesn't get right was they say that she hung herself on the tree. She actually died of old age. Actually, the rumors in real life were that she turned to stone and died. But
Oh, interesting. Okay.
so no, the movie even differed from that in that sense. But the real life Bathsheba Sherman, it said that she died of old age, but they didn't have much details beyond that describing her death. And then one thing I definitely noticed about the hauntings that were different
Hmm.
too were how Caroline Perrin in the movies, she always had those different bruises going on in her body.
Yeah.
So there was never any possession of Carolyn, first off. Oh, no, wait, scratch that. They do, in Andrea Perron's book, they do claim that sometimes spirits would talk through the mom. But as far as injuries go, the only one that is most well known is a bruise that, or not even a bruise, it was a puncture, a feeling of pain that occurred in the back of Carolyn Perrin's ankle.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Like the Achilles heel.
Kind of, yes. She basically described it as she felt as if someone had taken a sewing needle and punctured her in the back of the ankle with it.
Dang. That's freaky.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know if you heard Joshua in the background. He just went, that's weird.
yeah. So that's the only injury that I've seen in multiple sites is what was actually claimed. I imagine Andrea Perrin's book has a few more details on it, but uh, hopefully either one day I'll get to read it or even one of our listeners has read it
That's true.
and knows
Hopefully.
more about that.
Wow. Well, I think if you are cool with it, I'm going to take the reins and take us back into the actual movie, like the production side. Because
Yeah, see about that.
needless to say, whether all the details of it were real or not, it was really well done. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of that is due to a few key players. So I'm going to start with visual effects. David Ridlin and Juan Vargas were the main visual effects guys. And James Wan, the director, said he really wanted to focus on creating an atmosphere that was mostly practical effects, but CGI, where they absolutely couldn't find a creative way to create the desired effect. So, like an example of that, like when the sheet lands on the shape of a person and then flies up to the window, that's all CGI. Or when like everything would break, like the glass would break when birds would hit it, or when the little girl's head hit the glass, like things when things would break, that was typically CGI as well. And I think that was just a smart way to keep your actors protected. I'll link in the show notes below of a full breakdown of all the special effects of this movie, because I think it was really well done. Like one of my favorites was probably when Judy is floating in the water when Lorraine sees her daughter in the water as a bad omen. That was a practical effect with CGI. So, you know, they do show a clip in one of the behind the scenes videos of her just floating in a pool of water by herself. But, you know, they layered it with CGI for it to happen in the scene with Lorraine. So I
Mhm.
thought that was pretty cool. Yeah, so that's just kicking things off. But a little bit more diving deeper into this film, the writing of this film, specifically by Chad and Carrie Hayes, who were siblings, they actually were on the phone with Lorraine Warren almost every day while they're writing this script. They really got like a lot of her input, and Lorraine was on set frequently, and she notes that during a premiere interview that they really got all the details right for this film. So it's really interesting, especially given what you just said. It shows two very different sides to Lorraine Warren. The overall filming of it was just really well done. The DP was very creative. He worked on a lot of other films with James Wan, including Insidious 2. Like one of my favorite shots was when Judy is in the house alone and she starts getting attacked right before she's locked in the room with Annabelle, when the house is dark and like certain things are flashing. It just was beautifully done and it was so eerie. But as for the scenes being filmed, pretty much all this was filmed in North Carolina. It was either filmed in a studio lot in North Carolina or on in location. So I linked a specific breakdown that includes every location in Wilmington, North Carolina, where they filmed, for those uber nerds who really want to go check it out.
But you were talking before about the different scenes with the Warren's daughter Judy, and stuff that happened with her. What did you think about the switching back between the main plot and the subplot with their daughter and having to deal with Annabelle? Do you think it detracted from the movie and took away from the momentum, or did it just add? Was it interesting?
It created a whole universe. Like it helped. I think if they didn't have it, I don't think it would have been as successful of a franchise. Because if it's something that they introduced to like in the second movie, it just wouldn't have made as much sense. So because the film opened up with Annabelle in the very beginning,
Mhm.
I think it makes sense that they incorporated Judy being impacted, because I mean it makes sense with parents of that type of profession. It makes sense that the child would be impacted because children are said to be more, you know, more instinctual and more not clairvoyant, but more aware of their surroundings, you know, even on a
Mhm.
spiritual level. So I think it makes sense. I will say it does distract from the movie a little bit, but it does make sense overall why they did it, because it became such a large franchise as a result.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, similar to you, I didn't like it when they switched back and forth between the plots. Story wise, I guess it made sense of, okay, if you're gonna have this basement full of, demon possessed artifacts, of course your daughter's gonna probably have to face these horrors while you're away. I think though you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier where you're like they're trying to build a franchise, and you know good or bad depends on how you look at it. Personally, I think it's kind of bad, only in the sense of like you're taking time away from the movie to have to build up a franchise and say, oh, we're gonna make this into like a series of movies. But yeah, that's essentially what they used the Annabelle subplot and the basement of possessed artifacts for, which think again doesn't really add well to the quality of the movie. Does it build up a franchise? Sure. Um, you know, that's only my opinion on it, and other people might have different opinions on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think because maybe the goal, like I don't know if this film when it got picked up was slated to have a sequel behind it, or if Warner Bros. Picked this up and they're like, we're gonna make 3 movies out of this, or like I don't know within that deal if there was the possibility of a sequel being discussed from early on, because in that case, then it was really smart that they were thinking ahead. And who
Hmm.
knows, maybe from Lorraine's perspective, as she was working with writers, she was like, yeah, maybe during that time, who knows, maybe there were spiritual occurrences happening in their own home as a result of the work they were doing.
Well, so here's a question here. Do you think that they wouldn't have been able to make a second movie if they took away those scenes?
If they took away all the Annabelle scenes, I don't think they could have just opened into an Annabelle movie. No. I think
Hmm.
they would, I think they could have done another Conjuring movie, but I think because each Conjuring movie is so well crafted and connecting all the different threads that go together, I don't think it would have been as effective of a film if they weren't connected.
Hmm. Okay. I mean, I okay. No. I honestly, I think that they could have made a second movie even if they didn't have those scenes. If the studio willed it, it shall be done.
I mean, I like I said, I think they could have done a second movie, but it would have been a Conjuring movie. It wouldn't have been Annabelle. Like
Yeah.
it would have been. That's just my opinion. But I do have a couple things on our director because I think it's important to point him out.
Let's
James.
hear it.
So James Wan, like, just a shout out to him and his DP again, like John Linetti. I loved watching the camera work done in this. Like, they really did
Mhm.
a great job of making it feel like a true horror movie. Like, yes, we hated not seeing the monster, and yes, we hated the clapping game and all that stuff, but the way it was shot was so beautiful. And as I mentioned earlier, like the scene when Judy realizes she's alone in the house and stuff like that, like all that is due to the vision of James Wan. And James Wan, he was 36 years old when he made this movie, but he looks so young. He had dyed red hair. I'll link the behind the scenes videos below because he has like dyed red highlights and he's wearing like a t-shirt and shorts on set, and he seems like a ball of energy. He was really I watched as he was directing the kids, and he just was so good at communicating with them. He was good at making the objective clear of what they needed to do their job, but he was still like very friendly and compassionate toward them, which I think is really important in a horror setting, especially when you're working with kids. Because I mean, for kids, I'm sure it feels more real to them than most adults. But a little bit more about him specifically. He's an Australian film producer, screenwriter, and director. His first feature film was Steigen with Shannon Young, which won Best Guerrilla Film at the Melbourne Underground Film Festival in 2000. And in the early 2000s, Juan and Lee Winnell started a horror script that was inspired by their fears and their dreams. And an excerpt of that was later used to create Saw, which was a film made with basically no budget, only $1 million. And Lee even starred in the film as Adam. So he, as I mentioned earlier, is credited for the creation of Billy the Puppet, and he's known for using like a lot of dolls in his films. He's also known for using the backwards tracking shot frequently, which is something that you can see in this film quite a lot. But yeah, like as a director, from watching just how he interacted with his actors and with his crew, I really liked the work that he was doing. And the fact that he had Lorraine on set like all the time. There
Hmm.
are so many clips with her in it and her just being on set watching what was happening, and it was really cool to watch her. So I know our main actors also were a big fan of Lorraine. The actors also got to meet Lorraine Warren. Vera Farmiga, she actually started her career on Broadway in taking sides, and she's most known for being in the Conjuring universe and Bates Motel. I found a couple fun facts about her because she just seems so fascinating, and she is actually a part of a big family. She's like the second sibling of 7 kids, and a lot of them are also actors. So, fun fact, she couldn't speak English until she was 6 years old. She was raised in a Ukrainian Catholic household. She was nominated for her film for an Oscar for the film Up in the Air in 2010. And then in reference to The Conjuring specifically, so when she signed on to this role, she agreed to do it when she heard Patrick Wilson was going to be in it. She's like, that man's my husband. Let's go.
He is quite the specimen. What can I say?
Specimen. But so she had two paranormal experiences. So after she agreed to do the film, on her laptop screen, 3 claw marks appeared after closing it, like claw marks in her screen. And then the day after she wrapped, she had similar claw-like marks that appeared as bruises on her thigh.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I know.
Wait, did those claw marks on her laptop screen, did they stay or did they disappear?
I think they disappeared from what I read. But I'll include that linked below in case if I just had a brain fart. Patrick Wilson, who is our charming Ed Warren, he also began his career on Broadway, where he was nominated for 2 Tony Awards for The Full Monty and for Oklahoma. He's known for various aspects of his career. He's been in the Conjuring universe, Insidious, Phantom of the Opera, as Raoul, like in the film version, which is a pretty big deal for all the musical theater nerds out there. He originally was from Norfolk, Virginia, which is actually pretty close to where I used to live. And he married fellow Carnegie Mellon alumni
Dagmara Dominska
and has 2 kids. He has a couple of brothers as well, and his brother was actually in the most recent Conjuring film.
Ooh. Okay, who did he play?
He played Carl.
Carl
Glatzel.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, Carl.
I guess that was super unclear by just saying a first name.
No, I always like the name Carl. I find the name Carl to just be funny. But yeah, no, Carl Glatzel he's the one that doesn't believe that any of the stuff that happened was real.
Oh,
he's the middle sibling.
That's fascinating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know. Well, that was it. I focused only on those 2 actors. I know there are a lot of other really talented actors in this film. But because the Conjuring universe pretty much circles around Ed and Lorraine and their history, I wanted to focus on them for this. But I definitely recommend that our audience check out the behind the scenes videos for The Conjuring that I have linked in our show notes, because I mean, every actor's performance was brilliant. When you watch how a horror movie is made, like when it's broken down behind the scenes, you really have just so much, you're so impressed by the actors that they make everything look really real of what they're doing, even if they're just talking to a green screen. So I just want to leave with our audiences with that. This was a film that was really well done. Like, we are very skeptical to a certain degree on the story and how true it is or not, but the production value of this and the work that the actors and the director put in and the writers, I think, is really just worth saying, like, brava in that aspect.
Yeah, like I was saying at the start of this episode, the movie itself wasn't bad. There were some things obviously I didn't like. I've already stated them. It's the stuff that happens in real life that, like, just kind of that detracts from the movie in a sense. Yeah. But when you just look at it in its own isolated way, you just think, okay, it's a good movie about, good versus evil, and really kind of pushing that point forward.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. All right, Kylie. So I believe that's all of our points for a movie. I think we can both agree that there's quite a bit of controversy wrapped around the real life stories and the real life people of this film. And it'd be interesting if anyone in our audience happens to know anything to help shed some light on this whole situation, help us see a bit more of the truth. So thank you all for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to check out our giveaway details in the description for this episode. Make sure to participate in that, and maybe you too can win some amazing art from the Sugar Mint Gallery. All right. Thank you all for listening. Bye.
Bye, everyone.